I told the Tuskegee Airmen story. How many of you seen the Tuskegee Airmen movie? Let me see a show on it. Outstanding. Now, you saw Red Tails or the HBO movie? Outstanding. Well, I'm going to tell you something else. I'm an aviator. I'm a pilot. I own my own airplane from 1970 when I got back from Southeast Asia until Hurricane Katrina took out my house down on the Gulf, and I had to repair it because insurance wouldn't pay it. So I sold my airplane. That was more important than my house. I had to do that. I have a daughter, Melissa Michelle, just got her PhD degree, University of Maryland. The Tuskegee Airmen taught her too. I want to tell you about how some of this came about. I'd like for you to take a look here. This gentleman is Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. B.O. Davis, Jr. was the son of a military lieutenant colonel initially. When he went to West Point, he got one of the best educations in this world at the Military Academy at West Point. I'm going to talk to you about him today, but I'm also going to talk to you about someone who is my best friend in my adult lifetime, C. Alfred Chief Anderson. Chief Anderson was a man who grew up in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. He ended up growing up, and he wanted to fly like you wouldn't believe from the time he was 6 years old. And he ended up buying an airplane and teaching himself to fly. I'm going to talk to you about someone else very near and dear to me who influenced me in my life, and that was Daniel Chappie James, the first black four-star general in the history of this nation. Chappie James was the vice commander of Military Airlift Command outside of St. Louis, Missouri. He was a three-star general when I was a young captain there, and I just got married. And his wife and he graduated from Tuskegee. You see, Chief Anderson taught B.O. Davis Jr. to fly. He taught Daniel Chappie James to fly. And as a young 16-year-old kid from Mobile, he taught me to fly many years later. And he didn't stop there. When my daughter was 11 years old, and I was running the airport over at Tuskegee, the Tuskegee Airmen airport that I learned to fly on, my daughter was taken for her first flight. Officially, as Chief Anderson said, her first official flying lesson when she turned 11 by Chief Anderson. He had a box, big box, and there were 4 other boxes inside. And inside the smallest box was a logbook. And he took her for an hour and 45-minute flight around Tuskegee. And when she climbed out of the airplane after sitting on 2 phone books, a pillow, and I don't know what else she had under there, she ended up jumping out of the airplane, jumping around my neck. Dad, she taught me climbing turns, descending turns, steep turns. He even let me stall the airplane. Dad, she taught me all of these things. I'm going to be a pilot too. Unfortunately, Chief Anderson died at 89. But I, who learned to fly from him at 16, had the opportunity to come back to Tuskegee, help save and upgrade that airport, help get a $29.1 million Tuskegee Airmen Museum there, and have the opportunity to fly 403 hours more with the man who taught me to fly. So you never know in this life when people are going to really touch you. You never know, more importantly, when you are going to touch somebody. Even today, some of you may touch me with your story. So you always have to understand that personal interactions are extremely important. And your reputation is so important. Let's start back at the beginning. C. Alfred Anderson, a young man who was born to his parents in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, after they had been told for years, you're not going to be able to have kids. He ends up growing up, and his dad worked at this boarding school in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Guys, this was a different time in America. And the time I'm going to tell you about was very different because there was segregation in this nation. Blacks and whites could not do things together, could not sit together. Here in the South, there were the black fountains and the colored drinking fountain and the white drinking fountain. I'm old enough, I saw that in this Alabama that we live in today. See, Alfred Anderson grows up. This father is like the man Friday. He's the supervisor of all the facilities. He sees that the grass is cut. He sees that the chickens and the eggs and the cows and all of the hogs are taken care of. And this is a girls' boarding school. Mrs. Wright's boarding school. Mrs. Wright was a very wealthy woman who ran the school, and she took care of the girls from Wilmington, Delaware, New York City, New Jersey, Philadelphia area. And they grew up from wealthy families, became the wives of folks who worked on Wall Street and that kind of thing. This black man, Chief Anderson's father, was the guy who ran things for her. Extremely important. He was looked up in the community as one of the great black leaders of the community. Anderson ends up